let's start with the text and let's look at the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua breaks out into several sections, and so let's just walk through those. We have chapter 1, in which we get the preparation of the leader. We get Joshua's installation as Israel's leader. Then we have a long section, chapters 2 through 5, preparing the community. So they scout out Jericho, they cross the Jordan, and they also then assert their identity through the various rituals of circumcision and Passover, the cessation of the manna, those sorts of things. Then in 6 through 12, they are possessing the land. And that's broken down into a move in which they seize the center in chapters 6 through 8. Then they attack a southern confederacy in chapters 9 and 10. Then they go against a northern conspiracy in chapter 11. And chapter 12 then summarizes by listing the cities that Israel has attacked and the kings of those cities whom Israel has captured and killed. Then we move to the distribution of the land, which covers chapters 13 to 21. It's the longest single section of the book. We see them in chapter 13 distributing the land to the tribes who will live on the east of Jordan. And then a long section, really, 14 through 17, dealing with Judah and the sons of Joseph, and that's Ephraim and Manasseh. And so you get the impression here that Judah and the sons of Joseph, Judah, Ephraim, and Manasseh, will be the main players in this story. Then 18 and 19, we have a shift of scene to the city of Shiloh, and there the 7 northern tribes remaining receive their allotment. Then in chapter 20, several cities are set aside as cities of refuge. That is, places where someone can flee if it's thought that they've committed a crime, but they don't think they've committed a crime, and there needs to be some time to sort this out. They can flee to the city of refuge. Then in chapter 21, we get the cities that are given to the Levites, since they are not given any territory of their own. So the land is distributed in chapter 13 to 21. I got to tell you something. I really think that for ancient Israelites, 13 to 21 was way more interesting than any of the other parts of this book. You know, you can read about the battles, and that's all really great, but what everybody wants to know is, when do I get my check? When do I get my land? And what land belongs to our people? And so 13 to 21, the land distribution was probably of way more everyday practical importance to the Israelites than the stories of battles fought long ago. Then we have 22 to 24. This is where, after this whole process is complete, Joshua forms them into a nation. And in chapter 22, there's a controversy that leads them to affirm the unity of the nation. Then in chapter 23, Joshua congratulates them on their faithfulness. And in chapter 24, there is a call to devotion and a renewal of the covenant. And then the book ends on a really strange note. It ends with 3 funerals, the legacy of 3 great leaders. They buried Joseph, finally, having been carting his body all over the wilderness for 40 years, and he had, of course, been dead long before that. So they finally get old Joseph buried in the right spot. Then there is the priest Eleazar, who is buried, and, of course, Joshua is buried. And with these 3 funerals, the period of the settlement comes to a decisive end. Indeed, with the burial of Joseph, the period of the promise comes to fulfillment. Joseph was the last of the patriarchs, right? And so when you bury Joseph in Canaan, you're affirming that the promise given to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph has now been fulfilled. Eleazar was a priest who lived during the wilderness period. When you bury Eleazar, you're bringing that wilderness period to a conclusion. And then when you bury Joshua, you are saying that the time of God's fulfillment of the promise is complete. And so these 3 funerals are really important because they seal the end of this era in which Israel is waiting for its land. And now Israel has its land, it has a national identity, and it is ready to move forward. So I just want to point out to you a couple of interesting things related to the vocabulary, certain technical terms that appear in the book of Joshua. One of them is the Hebrew word cherem, which you don't need to remember, which is usually translated ban or destruction. This word appears really only in chapters 6 through 12 with any thematic importance. There are references back to this in some other chapters, but people tend to talk as though the book of Joshua is wall-to-wall total destruction. But actually, the theme of the ban, or the taboo and destruction of cities, is really only dominant in chapters 6 through 12. Then we get some vocabulary around the word for to inherit. And this covers chapters 13 through the end of chapter 24. And inheritance is interesting. The point here is not just possession of the land. Inheritance is coming into possession of something through a family-driven process. Inheritance is about family law, family issues. And so inheritance then, this is not just them dividing the spoils of the land. Oops, get my microphone up here. This is really about them receiving something that has been bequeathed to them. And inheritance also implies legal possession, not dispossession. Then we have, in chapters 1 through 12, an astonishing number of times we have reference to kings and ruling as a king. These are the same root in Hebrew. Melech is the word king. Malach is the word for ruling as a king. And in chapters 1 through 12, we have about 90 to 100 occurrences of the word king or rule as kings. Quite interesting. Then throughout the entire book of Joshua, two terms are very important. One is just a generic term for to possess or to dispossess, and the other is the term for law or instruction, Torah. And so both of these words cover throughout the entire book of Joshua. And so just the distribution of these key words gives you some idea. The first half of the book deals with the banning of cities and conflicts with rulers. The second half of the book deals with dividing up the inheritance of Israel. The whole book circles around the two themes, interestingly enough, of Israel's possession of the land and Israel's completion of the law. And so those things are very important. They go side by side. Okay, there's an interesting connection among the different sections of the book. And so what we have at the very beginning of the book and the end of the book is material relating to leadership. Joshua comes to center stage in chapter 1, and then he's buried at the end. And so we have these three leaders then at the end also who were honored with funerals. Then chapters 2 to 5 and 22 to 24 focus on community identity. And so 2 to 5 has to do with Rahab. Is she a member of this community? Are the Transjordanian tribe people going to stay with the Israelites according to the promises they made? The Passover, circumcision, all these things in 2 through 5 relate to identity. And likewise, in 22 to 24, we have strong identity themes that come up. And then we have these middle two sections that deal with possessing or inheriting the land. And so you can see this is a type of structure that we sometimes refer to as a chiasm, or you have a sequence going through the book that is then reversed as you go out of the book. So it goes A, B, C, C, B, A. And it stresses certain themes operating this way. So at any rate, I'm not going to spend more time on that, but this is the layout we get of the book of Joshua.